Otitis media is a worldwide child health problem, affecting as many as 1 child in 4 under 10 years old. It is the most common bacterial infection in children under 5. OM usually begins as an acute infection, but without appropriate treatment, can lead to OME, otitis media with effusion. In this condition, an abnormal amount of glue-like fluid may collect and remain in the middle ear, eventually leading to hearing impairment. 2/3 of children who develop OME will suffer hearing loss of 15 decibels or more for up to 6 months, which may cause learning difficulties and behavioral problems. Performance at school is often affected, which may result in children failing to reach their maximum potential for intellectual and linguistic development. They may score significantly lower in tests of mathematics and reading. Children suffering from chronic OME may appear withdrawn and disobedient. Frustrated and aggressive behavior is often reported. Developmental problems caused by otitis media with effusion in infancy often only come to light in the long term.
In the NHL tonight, the Flyers put their first-place lead on the line in a game with the
In an
Capitals.
American study, ENT consultants reported that among OME children, over 50% showed signs of frustration, 40% were disobedient, and large numbers showed withdrawal, aggression, and hyperactivity. The children most at risk from otitis media are male children with a history of the disease in the family, but other factors also play a part. Children who go to daycare centres seem particularly susceptible, and ones that live in a home where someone smokes. If the child was not breastfed as a baby, that increases the chances too. Children who contract acute OM in the first 6 months of life are 62% more likely to suffer repeated episodes than those who reach their first birthday without the disease. Young children with acute OM are often irritable and uncooperative, making otoscopic examination and diagnosis difficult. If acute OM is not treated effectively, it may develop into chronic otitis media with effusion, OME, where congestion of the eustachian tube leads to an accumulation of middle ear secretion. Many children with OME are treated through surgery to insert tympanostomy tubes or grommets to ventilate the middle ear. In one study where surgical and medical therapies were compared, the children who'd had grommets implanted showed more scarring and thickening of the eardrum. As samples of middle ear fluid cannot be obtained easily, it's difficult to identify which organism is causing the problem, and so treatment has to be empirical. The 3 main pathogens known to be responsible for most cases are Streptococcus pneumoniae, Haemophilus influenzae, and Moraxella catarrhalis. Research has shown that infections caused by these pathogens rarely resolve without antibiotics, and amoxicillin is commonly prescribed as a first-line treatment. But in many countries, resistance levels to various antibiotics are rising, especially to penicillins, including amoxicillin. With Haemophilus influenzae, for example, in Spain, there is 35% resistance to amoxicillin, 30% in Greece, and 30% in Canada and the USA. And more significantly, Streptococcus pneumoniae is reported to show 78% resistance to amoxicillin in Saudi Arabia, 70% in Hungary, and 24% in the United States. As a result of these resistance patterns, amoxicillin is potentially threatened in countries where resistant strains are very prevalent. So alternative antimicrobial therapies, such as cephalosporins, must be considered. However, not all cephalosporins are equally effective against penicillin intermediate resistant strains. A recent trial compared the relative effectiveness of two cephalosporins, cefuroxime axetil and cefaclor, in children with otitis media. Middle ear samples were taken by tympanocentesis before starting antibiotic treatment. These samples were analysed and the pathogens were identified. Of these pathogens, 35% were Streptococcus pneumoniae and 23% of these showed intermediate penicillin resistance. A second sample was extracted from the children's ears after 4 days treatment with either cefuroxime axetil or cefaclor, which allowed the in vivo eradication rates of the two antibiotics to be compared, data which is rarely available. Against the penicillin-susceptible strains, no significant difference was observed. However, against the strains with intermediate penicillin resistance, cefuroxime axetil was significantly more effective than cefaclor in eradicating the bacteria from the middle ear, an important step in preventing OME. Otitis media puts enormous economic strain on the healthcare system too, in terms of visits to family doctors, medicines and surgical intervention. One UK survey showed that ear infections were extremely common and that almost all of the children who were taken to a doctor received antibiotics. In a quarter of these cases, the antibiotics were ineffective, and of the children whose symptoms had disappeared, around a third had a recurrence within 1 month. More children are taken to the doctor for episodes of OM than for any other childhood illness. If the first drug prescribed isn't totally effective, the accumulated costs of a second visit to the doctor will probably amount to at least 5 times the cost of the original treatment in terms of the doctor's time alone, excluding the cost of the second antibiotic. Prescribing an antibiotic which eradicates the organism first time ultimately helps utilize resources more effectively. It's impossible to calculate the cost of otitis media to society in general or to the individual in terms of lost learning and behavioral problems. Zinnat has collective properties that make it a rational choice in OM, a powerful and cost-effective treatment that has been shown to achieve the primary objective of antibiotic treatment, eradication of the infecting organism.